Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Budget Advisory Committee meeting in order at 2 o'clock. And we'll begin with the roll call.
Chair Bergman,
Here.
Vice Chair Hall is absent. Ms. Major is absent. Ms. Hall?
Oh, Miss Hall. Ms. Hales.
Here. You're just saying if I was listening.
Okay, the first item on the agenda today is department presentations, and I believe in IT starts first.
Good afternoon. I am Suzanne Linton. I am your Information Technology Director. In IT, we have three different departments. We have Information Technology, which covers public safety and City Hall and all departments and divisions. Then we have GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems. And underneath my division is also the Performing Arts Theater. So I'm going to start today with the theater budget. And there's a few slight increases. The first is professional services. We increased it $2,000 for acoustics. COVID opened, we opened back up this past year, and we have performances, many more performances than we'd been having. So we need an acoustic specialist to come in. Sometimes we have very large shows here, and we need help with sound. So that's what that increase was for. The other contractual services, 1,400 increase, was more performances after COVID for custodial. And we do go in and do a lot of sanitizing of the area also. We carried that forward from COVID. And that's it in the theater. Everything else, just to give you a little background what the theater department does, they maintain all media and performances for the city. We do all of the broadcasting for all of the city meetings, all of the live television productions, and we also do the Zoom and virtual hosting. Do you guys have any questions for the theater department budget? Okay, we'll move on to GIS, Geographic Information Systems. And if you guys don't know what that is, GIS is we keep an inventory and mapping of all of the meters and pipes and anything having to do with utilities in the city. We also map out all of our infrastructure, our buildings, anything underground, above ground, at ground level. So it's quite a big endeavor and a big task. We have 2 employees in that division. Unfortunately, we did lose our GIS administrator this year. She went to Washington, D.C. and got a great job. So we're very happy for her, but we're very sad that we did lose one of our main players here. So we were able to promote from within, which is wonderful, but we do have a mapping technician position available that we are currently looking for replacement for. This budget, the first line item I'd like to address is line item 31, professional services. There is $100,000 in that line item that has been canceled out, and it is in another budget right now. It is in the water division. That line item was for a lead and copper pipe GIS project. So that's being budgeted in another division at this point in time. It's Paul Smith. He's up after me, so you can ask him about that. And then the other, under repairs and maintenance, is we put $30,000 in for Microsoft Azure licenses, and that is Microsoft 365 services, cloud-based systems for all of our GIS servers for additional security. And training, I did up that because if we do get a new GIS person, GIS is very technical in nature, I'm probably going to have a lot of training needs for that new individual. and our the person that we brought up through the ranks. So I wanted to increase that budget just to make sure that I had everything covered for the new individual that comes in. And that's about it for GIS.
Any questions?
Is that Azure license an annual that will be?
Yes,
Every
it will
year.
be an annual year-to-year fee.
Any other questions? Let's move on to the next area.
Okay. Information technology. Currently, we have 6 full-time information technology professionals on staff and 1 part-time individual. We are looking at the management of approximately 654 devices citywide. And 2 things I want to lead on a great note. We were awarded a wonderful grant for Florida Digital Services, and that will hopefully be offsetting some of our budgetary software licenses in the near future. So that's something to look forward to. My budget basically stayed about even in information technology. Only a very few slight increases and some decreases. The decreases that you're seeing is because I try to negotiate my contracts on a 5-year term, which gives me substantial discounts. I end up saving hundreds of thousands of dollars by negotiating these types of contractual agreements. So some years, my license fees are higher than other years. This just happened to fall on a year where I do not have any increases because of those 5-year contractual agreements. And I also, you're going to see, you don't show it here, but we were asked to decrease our budgets by 1% across the board. And I did wipe out the 5,500 training on the line item for 55. And I only did that because we were awarded a $50,000 training grant in information technology for our staff. So I figured that was a good area to take that from. Does anyone have any questions?
Who is cybersecurity handled by your department?
It is.
And I'm feeling very sensitive because my manufacturing business suffered a ransomware attack April Fool's Day, and it took us 2 months to recover. And it was severe, and we thought we were in a good place. Like, we had done all the things you should do, and we had air gapped this and, backups here and to cloud everywhere. And those people failed us, and one of the things that we recognized we didn't do was some auditing of our vendors who provide those services. I just would love, because I'm hypersensitive over it, and also it's changed the way we look at our budget for that. Like, it really has. Like, we substantially increased our budget because we saw how fast things are changing. We had, and you go to the 5-year contracts and that kind of thing. What we had was 2 years in the decision world, and things had moved at the speed of light. And so the things we put in place weren't good enough.
Yes.
So I'm just curious to know, have you prepared in your budget for that?
Yes. And I'll just explain a little bit where we are with cybersecurity. We actually have been preparing for the last 5 years for our cybersecurity endeavors. We have 2 certified cybersecurity specialists on staff who have the highest cybersecurity certification that you can get in the world. We're very lucky in that regard. We here at the City of Tarpon just had a penetration audit about 18 months ago, a full penetration cybersecurity test. And that's where they come in here, they do social engineering, they try to get through our networks, internal, external, and obviously it was successful. We passed successfully, it was wonderful. We take cybersecurity exceedingly important here. We do have everything that you mentioned. I can't talk that much about it because under state statutes, we're not allowed to speak that much about our cybersecurity network and infrastructure. But we are at a solid state. I have been here for 10 years, coming up this July. We have never had an incident ever with any type of cybersecurity or incident. Knock on wood. We take it very seriously. We do extensive training to all of our employees. Everyone has to go through cybersecurity awareness training annually. And when they come on board, we run scans on a daily basis. We keep a really, really tight rein on everything. And, you know, sometimes people feel like we're too tight. You know, we get that a lot. You know, like my emails were blocked. Oh, sorry. You know, that's how it is. If it's blocked for a reason. So, you know, we tend to err on the side of everything could hurt us. So we block everything.
I can. Now I know.
Exactly. We block everything. We don't care. I mean, we geographically block things also. We only allow certain countries to communicate with us. And it's a very few countries. You can count on one
The only
hand.
thing, whenever you said you had cut that training budget, that's, is your department responsible for the training costs of the entire city?
Yes, it
employee
is.
base?
No,
And I
well-
guess some of your grant money goes to that as well?
Yes. Well, the grant money is specifically earmarked for my staff, but the training funds you'll see is in repairs and maintenance under 46. That is where my training for my employees is, or all city employees is.
Oh, okay, so that's not a part of your training budget.
Correct.
Okay.
The all of the training goes inside of that budget, and that's for the citywide employees. We send out emails to everyone almost on a daily basis trying to catch them. You know, they're just simulated phishing attempts. And our people, you know, social engineering is huge. If we're going to be compromised, that's how it's going to happen. Social engineering. So they're very well trained. I feel like we've done a really great job. They can spot it. You know, you guys are good. They've been wonderful. So training is key here, and we're sticklers on that. We make sure it's 100% with training.
Makes me feel better.
Yeah.
Any other questions for IT?
Just clarify, you mentioned you have 6 employees. That's your IT and your GIS together.
No, there's 6 information technology, and then there's 2 GIS.
Okay. There's only 4 on the employee listing.
Some of them are in the water.
Oh,
They're
right.
split.
I remember now. Okay.
Yes. And then
Anything
2
else for IT?
theater.
All
Any
right,
more
thank you.
questions? Thank you so much, you guys. Have a great day.
Who says go?
Go.
There we go. So, good afternoon. I'm Bob Robertson. I'm the Project Administration Department Director, and I have 3 quick slides to tell you about what the Project Administration Department is. Besides being a multisyllabic word, phrase of what my department is, what I always describe it as is essentially the engineering department for the city. And what we do is several things. We're an internal service department, so we provide the services to any departments that are working on projects. We can help them with the design phase, we can help them with the construction phase, or we can help them with both. And we've recently added one more tool in our toolbox. We also help with grants. And this is PJ. She's our newest hire in my department. She's our grant project specialist. So our department is the point of contact citywide for our engineer of record contracts. We manage those. We manage the hydrogeologist and surveyor of record contracts, geotech, and we also help keep an eye on the utilities engineer of record contracts too. So keep an eye on the professional services, and many of them go through our department as sort of the gatekeeper. So my department has 5 positions. There's me as the director. I have an assistant director. I have a project inspector. PJ, who I just introduced, is a brand-new position that was added last year. And then in the middle there, you see I have a second project inspector that has been added for this coming fiscal year. So a lot of what you see in my budget accounts for a new employee. The board approved that position last year. It remained vacant intentionally this past year, so they let me fill it this year. So last thing, as I said, my department is an internal services department. The work that we do is generally split by the ratio you see there, and that's how our salaries are divided as well. So roughly 52% of the work we do is in for water and sewer projects, 19% stormwater, and 29% general fund. So that's how our expenses are broken out. So that's my overview. I'll just do a quick highlight on my budget. As I said, the budget is broken into several places, but I wanted to point out, you'll probably notice that my budget went up by about $150,000 overall on my expenses this year, and that mostly accounts for the fact that I'm adding 2 new vehicles for the 2 employees that we hired, the one for this year and the one that's coming in the next fiscal year. That and the associated expenses with a new employee, cell phones and training and all those other things. So my expenses are almost entirely personnel. The one line item that we do have that's not personnel is professional services. That's the 3,100 line item. And that's where we have some funding available to us for some of those things I mentioned on the slide, the survey services or geotech or something that a department needs that may not be directly associated with a project, plus some oversight and miscellaneous work that we need consultants to help us with. So we put that in our budget to help keep projects moving. And that's really the overview of my department, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Bob?
Nope.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Bob, would you motion in the Public Services team? While he's doing that, I'm Paul Smith. I'm the Public Services Director. I'm assisting the city manager here today. One of the feedback comments we got last time was that perhaps a little more detail on some of our budgets, so we've done that. We've got 14 slides. We're going to read through them quickly, though. We understand the pace here. We're moving, but want to give you an opportunity to see what we're doing and ask any questions you want. I'll introduce the team quickly, too, while Tommy's setting up. Tommy Kiger is the Assistant Director. He'll be giving the presentation today, and then our leadership team includes Howard Hunt, Golf Course, Rodman Reeves, Sustainability, Jamie Taylor, Recreation, and Cheryl Stedge with the Cemetery. And any real detailed questions, we might need to have them come up and help us out. But
Go over the PowerPoint thing, Tommy, is it coming up?
Yeah. There we are. Okay. All right, thank you all for your time today. And today we'll be presenting our draft budget for the Public Services Department. I'm Thomas Kiger. I'm the Assistant Director for Public Services. Paul is obviously our Director. And we've also got the rest of our leadership team here. Next slide. Am I in control?
yeah, I think so. I think other people were changing their own slides. Ron, do you?
Apologize one sec.
There we
There
go.
it is. Okay. All right. Okay. So here's a quick summary of our org chart. You can see we're the Public Services Department, and we have sort of 5 key areas within our department. On the left, you have utility operations. We also have the golf course, recreation programs, the city cemetery, and the sustainability program. You'll note that these are color-coded. 2 of these sectors exist as self-funded enterprise funds. The water sewer fund funds utility operations, and the golf course is also enterprise funded and fully self-funded. Recreation and the cemetery are largely funded from the general fund, And sustainability, because it branches across all sectors of the city, is a hybrid. It's partially funded from utility funds and the general fund. Paul already introduced our staff. These are our different leaders for all the different areas. And this is a quick summary of our budget as of May 2023. We have 16 different budgetary divisions or budgetary accounts, and those are again broken up into personnel, operations, and CIP. In the past, our total budget for the year is going to be about $17 million. The vast majority of that operations is going to be operating in personnel at about $14 million. You'll notice it's a little different than in the past. Previously, we had been about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 between personnel, operations, and CIP. This is a little different this year. We've experienced a little bit of inflation on the operational side, so we've had to readjust our CIP. So the CIP is relatively a little bit lower this year, particularly in the utility sector. Quick summary of our recreation division. Recreation is responsible for all sorts of recreational programming at the Recreation Center and many other city facilities. The key cost sector in the budget for recreation is personnel. We have 25 full-time and part-time staff with a total of about $600,000 in personnel expenses annually. The next budgetary key areas are slightly smaller. We have contractual services. That's largely for instructors and program fees. Those are the different contract employees that we bring in to do manage sports leagues and dance clinics and exercise clinics and things like that, and those do tend to be partially self-funded. Operating expenses is another key area for recreation, and that's heavily focused on event supplies, the things we need to develop the recreation programming, things for the senior programs, and supplies for the summer camps. It's important to note this is a partially self-funded division, and it's currently recovering about 20% of operating costs as of 2023. Next, we have the Cicadia Cemetery. Personnel is, again, a key cost sector for the city cemetery. We've got 4 full-time staff out there. Contractual services is another key area. The contractual services in this case is largely landscaping and tree services, and we also have services for contract burial services, which is, again, partially self-funded. So when we do a burial, we incur that cost and we budget for it in advance, but that cost is recouped as part of the fees for the burials when the burials occur. We also have a couple of capital outlays identified, which is unique here. We've got a replacement utility vehicle that's at end of life, and we've also got a little bit of money in the budget for continued turf improvements for like new sod for certain areas of the cemetery. And as previously mentioned, this is another area which is partially self-funded. We recover revenue as we, sell operating supplies like mausoleum markers and things like that. So we do budget for those operational supplies, but those are then sold at a markup to the end users. Next, we have the sustainability budget. This is relatively new. This is our second year for sustainability having its own budget. This is largely an administrative budget. So the key areas here are going to be promotional activities to support our citywide sustainability programs, which branch across a variety of areas within the city. We also have a very successful sustainability intern program funded at about $12,000 for next year. We've gotten a lot of good work out of our previous sustainability interns. And we've also got some money set aside for the EV charger program for 2 new EV charging stations and some sub-meters to measure the progress that we're making on the electric vehicle charging program. And next up, we have a few slides on water and wastewater utilities. Our water and wastewater group is broken up into 2 key operational areas, water and wastewater. Within the water group, we have the water wells, which are the sources of our water. We have the RO treatment plant. We have the water distribution group, which is the folks that are in charge of maintaining the pipes that take the water from the plant out to the end users or the customers. And we also have the meter repair and maintenance group, which takes care of the water meters. That's our meter shop. And we also have the wastewater division, which is sewage collection. Those are the staff that go out and repair the sewer pipes that take the wastewater from your home back to the treatment plant where it can be properly treated and cleaned up for discharge back to the natural environment. And we also have sewage lift stations, which is they take care of all the wastewater pumps that are throughout the city that help make sure that water gets from point A to point B for proper treatment, and they're also a general group for utilities maintenance. And lastly, we have the wastewater treatment facility, which provides wastewater service to 77% of our citizens. Key operational budget highlights here for the water side. At the RO plant, staffing is one of our large cost centers. We have 17 full-time and part-time full-time staff. We don't have any part-timers there currently. Those are largely technical positions, licensed water operators, electricians, utility management, environmental compliance specialists, and environmental scientists. Electricity is also a key cost for water production. It takes a lot of electricity to run all of our pumps and treatment processes, so we've got about $1 million budgeted in for electricity this year. And operating supplies is another key area. These are largely the consumable goods for the water treatment process, so things like chlorine, fluoride, the things that everyone knows go into your water, but then there's a variety of other chemicals that are necessary to the water treatment process to make sure that it's properly treated, disinfected, and meets all primary and secondary drinking water standards established by the federal government. Next, we have the water distribution group. Again, that's the pipes. They take care, make sure the water's getting from point A to point B out to the customers. Staffing is a key area here. We have a slight change this year. We were up to 12 full-time staff. We added 1 new position last year, and we reallocated 1 position from the wastewater group to the water distribution group to more accurately reflect our current workloads. And so those staffing costs are up a little bit, but that's something we've previously looked at and budgeted. And we also have some money set aside for repairs and maintenance. We've got $170,000. That's largely going to be materials for pipe repairs on an as-needed basis as the folks go out in the city and replace old valves, do new service connections, and replace like small line breaks and things like that, like when someone, hits a hydrant with their car or something like that. And last, we have the meter shop. So we've got historically, the vast majority of the meter shop budget has been devoted to repairs and maintenance. Our water meters are our cash register. They record every ounce of water that goes out to the end users, to the customers, and we want to make sure that we're keeping those meters up to date and capturing all the water that's being used by our customers so it's accurately billed. And we also put in a little bit of money this year for professional services, and that's going to be a water loss audit. So we're going to go through, bring in some professionals to look at our system, make sure that we're doing full billings capture and that we're accurately and effectively billing our customers. Next, we have the wastewater utility highlights. Similarly to the water plant, the wastewater plant has a significant staffing cost at about $1.6 million. We've got 15 full-time staff there, and that ranges, again, from licensed wastewater plant operators to environmental specialists, electricians, all those sorts of positions. Electricity is another key operational cost for wastewater operations. We've got a lot of pumps and mixers and filters and things like that that consume electricity. And we also have a significant center for operating supplies. Again, more chemicals, disposable goods for the treatment process, buying polymer and alum, again, chlorine, to make sure that we're sending reclaimed water to our customers that's properly disinfected to meet DEP standards. Within the sewage collection group, you'll notice that our staffing, if you look year over year, is down a little bit. That's because we did reallocate one of those positions from the sewage collections group to the water distribution group to more accurately reflect our current workload. The operating budget, again, similarly to the water distribution crew, is heavily focused on pipe repairs and materials. So valves, new sections of pipe, fittings, tools, consumable hardware, that sort of thing. And lastly, we have utilities maintenance and lift stations. So this is a crew. You'll notice that in their budget that their staffing costs are spread out through several different divisions within the water and wastewater utility. That's to reflect their workload as being primarily related to maintaining the wastewater pumps throughout the city, but they also act as our general utility maintenance crew. So when we have large maintenance items at the water plant or large maintenance items at the wastewater plant, they come in and they allocate a certain amount of their staff time to doing those maintenance activities. And again, here, similarly, we've got their operational budget heavily focused on repairs and maintenance, pump replacements, pump rebuilds, motor rebuilds, and electric service. So they also pay for the electricity for all those pumps that take the wastewater from point A to point B throughout the city. One thing that we do want to point out is if you look in your budget workbooks, the capital program is a bit different. We're currently working on a revision of the capital program. We're in the middle of developing a new 20-year capital program for the utility. 2024 is going to be a little bit of a catch-up year for us. So the capital program is going to be a little bit lighter on the capital outlay as compared to previous years to reflect catching up on historic projects and to absorb some of those increases in operational costs. And here you can see a summary of all the projects that we're proposing for fiscal year 2024. About $1.5 million on the water side and about $1.3 million on the wastewater side. And I believe lastly, we have the golf course. We've got some really great news on the golf course. We've had 2 very, very successful years from golf operations and revenue standpoint. We'll get to that in just a minute, but again, on personnel, that's a key area for us. We've got 24 full-time and part-time staff. Another key expense for the golf course is contractual services. So we sub out and use contract operations for all the maintenance activities on the course, all the mowing and fertilizing and aerating the greens and all those sorts of activities. And we've been very successful at that. It's really helped us keep our costs nice and steady. It's helped us manage our staffing, and the course is in really great shape. We also have a key item in there for rents and leases, which is kind of unique, and we do a golf cart lease program. Again, to help make sure that our carts are up to date, we change them out periodically, and it also helps us keep costs down on repairs and maintenance. 2 really sort of fun increases that we've got this year on the expenses side are related to revenues. So we've had 2 really bumper years for golf course rounds, and so we're increasing our budget for operating supplies for the pro shop and for beer sales. We have a lot more rounds being played, so we're selling a lot more materials, we're selling a lot more beer. So we've increased those costs a little bit to allocate the funds to buy the materials that people want to buy. Here you can see something really interesting. That pink line at the top is our monthly cumulative revenues for 2023. The blue line slightly below that is 2022. Last year was our record year. We were about $2.1 million in golf course revenues. We're probably on track to at least meet that, depending on how many rainout days we get throughout the summer and the wet weather. And it's fairly likely that we could exceed $2.1 million in revenues this year. And for that reason, this is going to be the first year coming up that we're not going to have any debt service budgeted for the golf course. Historically, they've been paying off some debts to other departments in the city from previous years, and that's all cleaned up now. So this year will be a sort of new clean slate for the golf course, and we're going to be reinvesting in the golf course. So we've allocated about $250,000 for capital improvements. That's largely dedicated to tee box renovations to help keep up with the increased number of rounds played per year, and make sure that we're investing in the future of the golf course and keep people coming back and keep those revenues up. That being said, I'm here, we've got Paul here, and we've got all of our leadership team here. So if there's any questions, we'll take those at this time.
I have one question regarding the budget overall.
Sure.
That I found difficult to follow on the sheets. You've got one column for original budget, one column for revised budget. What is the difference there from last year?
Well, obviously, the original budget's the first approved budget that got passed in September. Then usually what happens, we do a couple budget resolutions during the year. One main one is in January, and that's usually to bring over stuff from the previous year into the new year and stuff. So in this case, stuff from '22 that wasn't completed, outstanding purchase orders, the budget for them is brought over in the form of a budget resolution.
So when you do your variance, you're looking at the original budget rather than the revised budget?
Right.
Okay. And I noticed there were some rather sizable increases along the way.
Yeah. It probably depends on what projects might be going on in those individual departments. And
Okay. It was difficult to understand why the particular increases were there.
yeah.
Are there any particular areas you're interested in, or?
Well, like it, there was one that was showing a significant increase in engineering services, a couple of others, pretty significant increases in electric.
Yeah. There's been 2 areas where we've had significant cost pressures on the utility. One's electric. We absorbed a single-digit electric increase last year with Duke Energy, And this year, we're absorbing a 15% electric increase, which was just approved by the PSC back in February. So those are significant increases that we have to absorb. You know, we don't, on the water plant, we have to make as much water as the citizens demand, and on the wastewater side, we have to treat as much wastewater as the citizens send to us, and the pumps use the same amount of electricity per gallon, so if the price goes up, we have to absorb those costs.
Other questions?
Back on the recreation, your slide said 20% of the operating costs are recovered. Have we done a comparison to other municipalities and how we fare compared to others?
We haven't done a direct comparison to nearby utilities. Jamie, do you have anything you'd like to say about that?
Nationwide, we are a little bit lower than general municipal recreation departments. We do a lot of community outreach and community support programs that are not revenue based, but we have a lot of that positive impact within the community that eats up a portion of that cost recovery.
And
Yeah, if
from
I could
time-
add to that, I wanted to say it's a question of philosophy too, you know, making it affordable, being inclusive in our programs. And, you know, that's something the city manager encourages us to do, is to keep affordability in it and not focus solely on cost
Absolutely.
recovery.
It's there for the citizens to take part. Do you evaluate some of the programs from time to time that don't, like if it's a class that you're offering and there's not a lot of participation, to
Yes,
discontinue
absolutely.
it? Are the ones that are popular to expand those?
Yes, absolutely. So we keep a close eye and we have a good gauge on what we have going on day in, day out, and work with those programs that are struggling. And all right, well, do we need to market it? Is it a bad time of the day or whatever it may be? And then sometimes, you know, it just doesn't work out. And with our instructors, they are getting a percentage of what's brought in, so it behooves them to market themselves and you know, promote their programs as well. And then at some point, if it's not working, we go, hey, you know, let's part ways, or let's try again in the fall or something like that. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'd be interested to know if, well, I was gonna say with the power bills the way they are, the electricity costs so high. I'd love to talk to sustainability about the possibility of solar, but I know how much square footage it's gonna take for me to generate $10,000 a month in electricity, so you couldn't even make a dent, and you'd have to have all of, like, we don't have a building with a roof like I'm looking at putting solar on, so is that even conceivable that we could do something like that somewhere?
Yes, we're actually doing it. Two things I'd like to mention about that. One is we're on our second phase of solar panels at the RO plant. That's our largest energy user, the RO plant and the wastewater plant. So we've sited, basically shoehorned as many panels as we can possibly get, as you mentioned. And, you know, Tommy, what is the estimated offset and percentage?
Yes, our previous phase one of the solar program was, we are currently generating about 4% of our total energy demands in kilowatt hours annually at the water plant. And phase two is quite a bit larger. It's going to triple our solar capacity, so we'll be up to, we're thinking 14, 15% of our total energy demands, and that's just with like the sort of available space on site. You're right, the solar is heavily dependent on having lots of acreage. So we're filling in all the gaps at the RO plant with solar panels to try and keep those energy costs down. But we are kind of running out of space after this phase. We might be able to squeeze in a few more in the future.
Second part, many people don't know, is we're sort of in on the front end of this, but Duke Energy has a program called CEC. And what that acronym stands for is escaping me for the moment, Robin. Clean Energy Connection. And so they're doing utility scale solar in different parts of the state. And we have a chance to buy in basically with a subscription. And the idea is, working with Ron on it and our sustainability committee, and our board approved it maybe 4 years ago. We pay a little more up in the front, and I mean a small amount, like maybe 1% more. And then we start getting paid back through how much power these subscriptions generate. And so over time, it actually turns into a moneymaker at some point. But in the meantime, we're helping Duke build this utility scale solar.
Like you're buying into where there is acreage, they're creating the solar, but
Yes.
you're using their power. the
Exactly, and it's much more much more cost efficient for them, because these are huge, you know, like cow pasture areas. It's easier for them to do than Pinellas County, you know, with not a lot of vacant land.
Thank you. Well, so where's that in the, like, is the solar is that just a project that's in the budget somewhere? I'm still not always.
We
know what
actually
things
pay
are.
for that just
Oh, you already
through
pay
our
for it, okay.
account, yeah. It shows as a small fee, and then we get a credit back, and they're continuing to expand that throughout the state. But we asked for as much as we were eligible for, and I want to say it was 70 to 80% of our power needs is in that program.
Oh, okay. Excellent, thank you. Good to know.
Any other questions?
Just a general question on sustainability. On the meetings, public meetings and events and stuff, what level of participation are we getting? I know it's a relatively new program. Are we seeing participation coming up?
Robin, do you want to speak to that?
So we are getting some good participation. As you mentioned, it's a new program, so it's building, and we're getting more and more people showing up each time that we're doing these events. So for instance, last year in 2022, we did an Earth Day event for the first time in a few years, and we had, it was relatively small scale at the library. We had around 56 participants from the community. This past year, we did another Earth Day event, which was much larger in scale with more departments involved and multiple community partners. And this time we had around 225 participants. So that quadrupled in scale in terms of participation from our residents. And we're trying to have a presence at as many city events as possible. We just had a 4-part sustainability lecture series, and we had pretty good participation at that. Depending on the topic, we had some more people at some than others, so we're definitely starting to get some interest and engagement.
Great, sounds great.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, Ron, you had some updates you wanted to give us?
Yeah, the committee had some questions at the last meeting. The first one we had was, I think the concern was, and it was after, the Director Powell left, was a question was if it was experiencing a staffing shortage and if it is translating to delays in housing development permits being reviewed and issued. And Ms. Hall asked if there is a means for city manager to monitor the number of permits, requests, and if the number is increasing year over year, and if there's a backlog. Well, I went back through and looked at the number of permits. We averaged about over last year about 5,600 permits. We increased, I think after COVID, we went up right around 5.5, about 5,800, almost 5,900 permits. But then we sort of leveled back down to about 5,600 permits. They are down one position, and they said it's really, if anything, maybe a day or so in getting the permits processed. They stated in most cases, if there's delays, it's due to the contractors. They might have, the city gives them items, maybe it's back and forth with the permits, and the city gives the contractor back something that they need to fix something. And they might not get to it in a timely fashion. So that's, I think, sometimes the contractor, maybe if the customer complains, the contractor's blaming the city, but in actuality, from what they're saying, is the contractor has stuff to finish up and they're not getting it back to the city in time. So that's my, that question there.
Okay.
If you have any questions on that. The next question was, if the increased compensation, hourly rates, and salaries has helped with hiring. And I got with the HR director, and she said, yes, to some extent, but however, all their municipalities are increasing their pay rates also, so we seem to be playing a catch-up game with them. We end up having to start new hires further up into the pay range, which causes compression for existing employees who were probably hired in a much different labor market. That is the biggest complaint they have found from existing employees, that they are barely ahead of those new hires, although they have been here for several years. Some of that compression, you're trying to get people, but you're having to get them at the higher salary, which is getting close to what the existing employees are at.
Right.
I don't know if there's any questions on that, but that was the second question. And the last one was Connect Tarpon. You all wanted a survey on that, and you all got that, so.
Yes, just haven't had a chance to look at it yet.
Okay, I can understand why, but, so I just want to relay that back to you with the questions you had.
Okay,
you.
thank you. Any public comments? Staff comments? Board comments?
Board question. In the budget, so Ron, what's the significant variables you have in here now that could swing dramatically, or is there any concerns you have
Any concerns?
above your normal ones? I know with the police and fire being negotiated, do you have an, idea of what that may end up
Well,
increasing?
they're in the middle of negotiation now between the police and fire. We have sort of an idea with the police, it's a 3-year. Fortunately, I don't know if I mentioned to y'all, but our taxable values, I budgeted 5%.
Right.
They came in at 12.33% increase. So that additional taxable value increase is going to be enough to handle
That,
the pay raises and stuff, and I think a little bit more left over.
okay.
Besides that, right now, we're working on a water and sewer revenue sufficiency study, trying to, seeing what capital we need, operating cost of, like I think we mentioned at the first meeting, have just gone up 6%, 12%, now 18% from this time last year. So that's a big challenge there with those operating cost increase. And capital too, it's like the cost when you go out for a big project, something that might have cost $1 million a couple of years ago is now $2 million. So.
Are there previously approved projects that may get pulled because of that kind of thing? Or will we find a way? Like, how does that work?
Well, that's what we've sort of been doing with the water and sewer rate structure, is just looking at each project right now and saying, is there any that, that we can put a pause on and maybe extend out a little bit. But right now, I think the ones we're trying to do right now are ones that we really need to, for the maintenance of the system, we have to do these capital projects.
Any other comments? Next meeting, are there things on the budget process timeline that you presented at the first meeting? Anything of significance we need to look at, or is it basically when our next regular scheduled meeting is going to fall?
Well, we're thinking, you probably go back to your regular schedule, which I think would be the third Thursday, which would be the,
20th?
yeah. By that time might be good, because we had that public hearing.
Right.
Last week or so. So the first budget workshop's going to be on the 12th of July, and then the second one on the 18th. So by the 20th,
We should have
they'll have
some
gone through
feedback
2
and some
budget
ideas.
workshops, and then we can relay back. And the budget's going to change too. By the
It
time,
does.
we're going to, for them, we're going to revise the budget, and for yourselves, the next round of the budget, with the additional property tax in there and any other adjustments. So by then, we'll have the revised budget to you, and any other changes in it.
You see, we don't really need to concern about meeting prior to our next regular scheduled meeting, is what you're saying?
No, we've done all the departments,
Okay.
and, and I guess another thing, you mentioned the variances and stuff with the revise, if there's anything else we can get you, it helps,
Well,
when your analysis.
Well, on the sheet for the variance, it just said electric. It didn't say why the electric was going up
Yeah.
that much. That would be of help. So
Yeah.
it didn't really explain what the variance was.
Right.
It just said there was a variance. Okay,
For
well,
electricity, yeah.
why? That would help.
Well, we'll clarify that a little bit more next time.
So the next meeting will be our regularly scheduled meeting on July 20th then.
Yeah.
Anything for future agenda items? Seeing none, we'll adjourn this meeting at 2:48.